Welcome back to our first lesson of research. Remember, we're looking at an overview of the process that we're going to go through in these next 15 weeks. So far, we've talked about finding a topic that's narrow enough to manage, about finding audience and purpose, determining tone, and finding our sources that are both primary and secondary, digital and print, sources that are reliable, relevant, recent, and representative. So once we find those sources, we have to know a way to keep track of all the sources that we're going to look at. So we kind of get an idea of our sources, but before we start examining them, we create a source list or a working bibliography. And this is where we're going to write down the full bibliographic information for each source, and we're going to give it a source number. So let's look at this example, and it may be a little clearer what I'm talking about. So we have this book that our researcher on stresses in a teen's life is looking at. So notice here we have Seward, Bryan, and Linda Bartlett. So this is our author. Then we have the title of the book underlined, and we have the publisher's information. So this, before anything else is done, the person, before they even looked at the book, they write down the title and the publisher's information in a source list or a working bibliography. And then notice they've assigned this number 3 to it. Then they begin taking notes, and they decide, oh, this is a little piece of information I just might want to use. And so they write it down, or they take the note. This says one of the biggest causes of stress to teenager is that they have many of the responsibilities of adults, but they don't have many adult freedoms. Notice they put a number 3 by the information as well. So what this does when you create a working bibliography that's numbered, or a source list, kind of the same thing, you have all the full bibliographic information so that you don't have to write it every time you take a note from that source. So you can take your note, and instead of having to write title, source, and all that information, you just put the number down. So before you actually get in there and take the notes, you create a source list. Then you start taking your notes. Note-taking from your sources is the most essential part of research. You're going to read each source and find the information that answers your research questions. And as you take the information down, you're going to summarize and paraphrase the author's ideas and facts and put them in your own words. Now, these are two different strategies. We're going to study on what makes a summary, what makes a paraphrase, and you're going to practice doing it in your own research. The other way that you can go about taking notes is direct quotes, and this is when you use the exact words that are used in a source. So these are 3 types of notes that you'll be taking. So once you get all of your notes written, you've done your research, and you're going to look at everything that you have. You're going to reread your notes, you're going to think critically about the information that you've collected, and then you're going to decide how your sources fit together and what larger points do they support. And then you're going to write a working thesis statement. You may change it in the process, but this is something that you're going to start out with before you write. Then write a working thesis statement to express both your topic and the conclusions that you've drawn about it. Let's look at this example. Stress can damage teens' health in many ways, but teens can learn to manage their stress and decrease its effects on their health. So in our example, our researcher has determined that what they've looked up, they can talk about how stress damages a teenager's health. So that's the first thing they're going to talk about. Then the second thing they're going to talk about is ways that teenagers can manage that stress. So they've put it all into one statement, and it's going to control their whole paper. That's what you're going to do as well. So after you create your thesis statement, you're going to plan out, you're going to organize what you want to say. And you're going to organize all your notes into, first, a graphical organizer, such as a mind map. And I know you've done these before, so let's look at this example. The big topic is how stress affects teens' health. And then this person is going to talk about eating disorders, about the immune system, about the impact on nutrition, and about the impact on a person's behavior. So this is a graphic organizer, a mind map. Then we take that mind map and we take the concepts and create a formal outline where we have our thesis statement written out. Then we have Roman numerals for our main points and capital letters for our subpoints. And this is in MLA format. We'll talk about that later, but you'll learn to write a formal outline. From the formal outline, then you begin to write your draft. So you will use your mind map and outline, because we're going to do both in class, to write the draft. In the drafting stage, you will weave together the information from your formal outline, and you will create a coherent argument that supports the conclusion stated in your thesis statement. So for those of you who have had me before, you know we've talked about 5-paragraph essay structure, where you have your introduction, your body, and your conclusion. And we will be talking about this in the process as well, where we have our introduction, which hits the nail on the head with a hook, an introduction to the topic, and a thesis statement. Then in each of our body paragraphs, we'll have a tech paragraph where we have a topic sentence. We have commentary and evidence and clincher sentence. And then in our conclusion, we will wrap it up or tie it up with a restatement of our thesis statement and ideas and some kind of extension. So we're going to talk about the structure of this draft before we actually get in and write it. And then you're going to write a good solid essay as your first draft. Then we're going to come back to that and we're going to revise and edit and rewrite. And drafts require revision and editing to make the work suitable for your audience. When you revise, you should read your draft twice. Actually, we're going to read it 3 times. On the first read through, you're going to focus on content and organization. On the second read through, you're going to look at style. And on our third, we're going to look at particularly at editing. We're going to look at capitalization, punctuation, and that kind of stuff. You're going to evaluate your draft and then you revise it accordingly each time we go through the stage. You're going to seek feedback from teacher, me, your classmates, different groups that you're working with, and others would be like your parent or maybe a tutor, whether it's peer or professional. Once you've written the final draft of your research project, you're going to publish your work in a format that fits your intended audience and purpose. Options are traditional research paper, which we're going to do. A multimodal text, that would kind of be an interactive text. We have done that in the past, but that's not what we're planning to do this year. A website, again, unless somebody really clamors to create a website presenting their work for the class as in a presentation, this is not something we're planning to do. A podcast is like a voice thread. I don't want voice threads, but I would consider a video cast of or presentation of your work. That's a possibility, doing a YouTube video. A wiki is not something we're planning. Last year I did quite a bit of school got some certifications and such, and we publish to wikis every single time. And it's very valuable. It's just not a choice that we're going to use for our class. So, once you finished your research project and have published it, then you get feedback on it. You receive the feedback on your work, and it's really an important part in the whole process and your development as a writer. You can seek feedback in various ways. For instance, you can ask questions to those who have read your research project or have heard your presentation of it. You are going to present. One way or another, you're going to present, and you will be getting your peers' feedback. So this is the way we'll be getting feedback. And then our last will be for you to reflect on what the whole process of the research, the whole process and quality of your product. Were you able to communicate to your audience what you wish to communicate with them? And our reflection will be part of your final for this unit and for this semester. So just as a gardener plans the placement of plants in a garden and helps them grow, you can plan a successful research project by following the steps of the research process. And let's look at those steps. We had finding a topic. We had determining audience and tone. We had developed a solid research questions. We had searched for sources of information, both primary and secondary, that are digital and print, that are relevant, reliable, recent, and representative. Then you create a source list or a working bibliography that is numbered before you even start reading your sources. Then as you take your notes, you're going to take summaries, paraphrases, and direct quotes, and you will put the number related to your sources. Then after you finish your research, you're going to look at everything that you've collected. You're going to look at your main points that you can support with your research, the overall ideas, and you're going to put that into a graphic organizer, and then you're going to, from that, create a formal outline. Once that's done, you're going to do your drafting. We'll have a first draft, we'll have revision drafts, we'll have editing drafts, and then you will publish it. For sure you will publish in a research paper, and then there will be one other method of publishing. Not quite sure what we're going to do for this class yet. And once we've published it and presented it, then you'll reflect on the process and the reception of your project by your audience. Okay, so this concludes the stages of the research project. But what I would like to show you is in Canvas, where you can find our schedule for the research project. So here we have our home page for English 2A. And over on the right-hand side, you can see common pages. And one of them is Research Lesson Schedule. And if you open that up, you have here the whole research schedule for this semester. Now, the scheduled in the library times are highlighted in yellow. Notice that we have the lesson, the date we're going to do the lesson, the topic of the lesson, and then whatever activity that we're doing in class and the due dates for the activity. So you'll want to check that out. Again, that is on our Canvas homepage. If you're looking at the home when you get there, you go to Common Pages over on the right-hand side, and you're going to go to Research Lesson Schedule. Okay, so that concludes our overview of the research process. I'll see you in class.